My name is Bill Roth. I'm the new town planner. I've been here since March. This project actually probably started in mid to late 2020. It went through several reiterations, and then the former planner, John, left, and there was no planner for almost 10 months. So this project and a lot of the other projects were kind of put on hold. One of the things that we decided to do when I got hired is to add some additional public engagement, and so that's what this is. Nothing's written in stone. This has been a study. We held a focus group meeting on Monday, and then we also looked, and then tonight's meeting, it was all the property owners abutters within 300 feet, and property owners within the business park were invited. So it's a much larger group. We want to take feedback in. We want to look at, what's being proposed. I've already, beginning of the meeting, before the meeting, people have their certain opinions on stuff. We're going to take all of that back, review it, and then look at possibly making changes, any recommendations, things that the public is adamant for or against, because ultimately this will go in front of the planning board for public hearings, most likely if we move forward with this, we would look at having it in the annual town meeting in 2024, which would be next May. So the official public hearings, this is just a public meeting to take in, solicit input, feedback, and then the official public hearings for the planning board most likely will be in January and February if we're going to move forward with a May 2024 town meeting. With that, I'll be stepping in certain things. You all have copies of the presentation, and the people on Zoom can see them. So I'm going to have our Sukana, our consultant. MAPC is our regional planning agency. They're the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. They're the ones that have been contracted with the town to look at doing this. And so we'll go through the presentation, and then we will start taking any comments and concerns. If you have something on a certain slide and a comment, please raise your hand, because we need to get the microphone so it can, because this is being broadcast out. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Hi, everyone. My name is Sukanya Sharma, and as he mentioned, I'm from Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I am the project manager for this supplemental outreach that we are doing. This study was conducted by another planner at MAPC. His name was Carlos Montañez, and he has now switched to another project, and I've taken over this project management role, and so I'm doing the supplemental outreach, and then you'll see my face again for the Route 27 upcoming project, which we'll talk about a little bit more on, more about mixed-use development and rezoning study again there along Park Street. So moving to the project background, which is in the slide after this one. Yep. We were contracted by town of Stoughton to get this project started, and we started this, as Bill mentioned, towards September 2020. You should remember that there was this context of COVID. We were trying to adapt into how to do work remotely, and so this project had its own delays. And across the 2 years, we did work on some of those goals and project purpose that were identified from the initial scope that we had defined. That included leveraging some of the existing infrastructure, the sewer improvement that happened along the corridor. This is a good opportunity for the park to sort of take advantage of that. This study would also complement the upcoming zoning study that we are doing along Park Street, which is the mixed-use zoning project. And then this ultimately hopes to promote economic development and industrial growth. It's one of those parks in the town which can sustain lot more jobs and lot more businesses as we compare it to other industrial parks in the South Shore region. And so it's a great opportunity to add to the tax base of the town, to add more jobs that employ people with living wages, and in general promote economic development. So this is the study area, which is we are still open to feedback, so we are moving things around here. There are a couple of parcels that we intend to add, but broadly it's bounded by Turnpike Street, Park Street, and South Street, and then Route 24. Mostly the businesses, as you might all know, are along Campanelli Parkway as well as Schumann Ave. It has a healthy mix of industrial businesses, but there is room for growth. And just to mention that it is also served by transit, by the Brockton Area Transit and Route 14, and there are a couple of bus stops close by. On the next slide, you'll see the components. So what did we do during this study? We studied the land use and zoning of this area, so what is existing there. We also studied some of the industrial market assessment. So we looked at real estate data, what are the rents, how's the occupancy, and then we also looked at business conditions, how many businesses are there, how many employees does it employ, things like that. And then we came up with zoning recommendations, recommendations being the keyword. And we also, as the contract with the town was, we also proposed bylaw language, which you will see in the report, detailed report, but that language is also subject to change. That was sort of the structure of the study, and we did some engagement. We could not do as much engagement as we would have liked initially. We interviewed a real estate consultant who is an expert in the South Shore real estate region. And we were able to identify comparable parks to see how Campanelli is doing and the competitiveness of the park. And then we did planning board presentations, as well as now this is a supplemental outreach. There was also an attempt to conduct a business survey, but we did not receive a lot of response there. So moving to existing conditions, the next slide after this. In terms of physical attributes, there are 23 parcels on the park, and the park is about 208 acres large, which is approximately 90.6 million square feet. And if you look at just the building footprint, so not including parking, not including vegetation or wetlands, just the building, the gross building square footage is 1.2 million. So it's very low density, or the intensity of land use is very low. 1.2 million building footprint in a 90.6 million square feet large park. Average lot coverage is about 27%. And there are a variety of sizes of parcels there, with about a fifth smaller than 1 acre, and about 35% larger than 12 acres. There's about 5% or 10 acres of the park is under wetlands, and we noted that there's only single point of entry, which is generally not the case in industrial parks. You generally have a bit more circulation. In terms of the business mix, there's a good mix of typical industrial businesses. There's a manufacturing component, wholesale trade, transportation, warehousing, and so overall a healthy mix. And these businesses, these 24 businesses on the park, employ about 500 employees. So we're talking about 500 jobs here. And if we go to the next slide, we can see the sort of zoning and parcel conditions which are existing. A lot of it was part of the physical attributes I talked about, but overall this park is zoned I or industrial in the current zoning bylaw of the town, and it also has portions of residential zones of RA and RB, which has vacant parcels within it, and those are generally with frontage along South Street. The zoning, just one more thing to highlight here is that the minimum lot size in the park is, according to the law, is 80,000 square feet. Which is about slightly under 2 acres. And if you would recall, the lot sizes that we noted for some of the existing parcels had very much smaller parcels, less than 1 acre. So a lot of non-conforming parcels in the park. On the next slide, you will see the 3 parks that we had identified as a competitive parks for 2 of them in Canton, Commerce Center and Mill Drive, and 1 in Randolph called the York Industrial Park. This was to basically contextualize the zoning findings to compare how such properties and Campanelli is doing. On the next slide, you'll just see one example of how we go ahead. Can you use the microphone, please? Yeah, no worries.
I'm noticing in your comparative assessment, you're using 2 parks in Canton, 1 in Randolph. How many of those back up to residential neighborhoods? Or are those standalone?
I think most of them are, but I can confirm. Mm-hmm.
Will Drive is, one side is industrial. In Will Drive, one side is industrial, one side is built-up residential, which has caused a lot of conflict.
Yeah, the traffic implications and such definitely are things to consider here. And we hope that after the feedback today and some of the things that we heard in the earlier session, we can address that. So in terms of land use and zoning assessment, the current slide, we just wanted to highlight an example of how we use these comparative parks. So we found that some of the dimensional and parking requirements in the Campanelli Industrial Park were much more restrictive than in other parks. They allowed for smaller buildings, for more intense land use, and lower parking ratios, as well as just overall more opportunity for businesses to expand. And so, for example, Campanelli has 80,000 square feet of minimum lot size, whereas Will Drive had less than that, 1.5 acres, which is less than 2 acres that Campanelli is offering, and York Park had only 20,000 square feet large minimum lot size, which is significantly smaller than Campanelli. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just now for the second time, you referenced the York Industrial Park in Randolph. Have you ever been there?
I haven't.
Well, you might be shocked because it's not the prettiest sight you're going to see. Matter of fact, if what you're proposing looks like that, or is going to look like that, that's a problem. The other thing is that park, part of it backs right up to the highway, Route 24. And I don't think I can't recall seeing any residential close by.
Right.
So I think that's a poor choice, because anyone here that goes over and looks at that, when I had my business, I had occasion to be over there for different things that we needed.
Yeah, I hear that. I think so. Based on the consultant, the real estate expert that we consulted, who recommended these parks for us, he works in South Shore region and is very has a good idea of how these parks are working. The idea was to have similar sort of businesses and intent to, like, the similar kind of industrial mix, as well as we could not find something that would be just perfectly like Campanelli, of like there'll be a residential component as well as everything that looks like Campanelli, but we tried to get similar real estate which would be competitors to Campanelli. If businesses are looking to come towards South Shore, these would be the parks they would be considering. And if Campanelli does not have the zoning that can attract them, it's just some of those businesses will decide to relocate or just move away or not be part of Campanelli. Those are jobs lost, that's tax base lost. So yeah, that was something, but I appreciate the comment. Moving to the next slide.
Someone online
Can
that,
someone pass the one of the mics, please, to him?
My name is John Pontuso. I live at 192 Corbett Road. And now there's woods behind us, but not that much room. And we already have industry there. And I think there might be wetlands too. We don't need anything else closer to us in that area. Also, you guys, as far as I'm concerned, you guys concentrate more on the industrial people and the businesses than your residents around here. We've been wanting sewer for a long time, and most of the town, I think, has sewer, and nobody comes down there and asks about sewer and stuff. So I think you need to concentrate on the people who lived there for a long time and not more on the industry that's out back there. Thank you.
Hello?
yes.
Go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. Hi, Julie Harding from 10th Street. First of all, applause to the last speaker. 10th Street has really brunt a lot of the traffic that goes between, it's the sole road that connects Park Street to Turnpike Street. We are inundated with commercial trucks, speeding. Of late, we've had some racing on our street now that it's been newly paved. And I cannot echo any better than the prior speaker. You are putting an exorbitant amount of effort into Campanelli Industrial Park. You are not thinking about the abutters at all. I'm deeply concerned with the traffic flow and how dangerous it is. I'm a runner. I walk heavily with my dog, and I cannot tell you how many times I've had to call the town to say that, you know, we were almost killed on this particular day. No one was more excited to get a sidewalk put in, but it's really no good when they're popping the curb and you're still not safe. So appreciate that there's room to grow in Campanelli, but you have to start putting some forethought into the abutters that have been there for years and years.
Thank you, Julie. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Keith Jorgensen. I live at 114 South Street and been there like Dick, my neighbor, since the 60s, 63. And I almost got killed about 3 or 4 weeks ago by a big dump truck, because ever since they did Central Street over, we've had ambulances, dump trucks, whatever, going down our street at excessive speeds. If it wasn't for the automatic braking on my car, I would have backed out and got hit by this guy. And I'm not exaggerating. It scared the Christ out of me. Everything that lady just said is true. The safety should be number one. And it's bad. It's gotten bad lately, and that will be worse. And I just found out about 3 days ago, my neighbor is an older gentleman. He was walking down the street, and a car came by and brushed his arm, actually brushed his arm. And it's like, that's scary. And he's careful. He was paying attention, but not good enough. It's just going to get worse. And like she said, you need to pay attention to the residents. Okay.
Thank you.
Just one other comment, if you don't mind, I'm
yeah.
sorry. We have had a new configuration of the traffic on 10th Street, where you actually narrowed the entrance going from Park Street onto 10th Street. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to handle that crosswalk, but now you still have trucks coming down there at the same rate of speed, and they're not slowing down. We've already had our stop sign taken out, brand new, by the way, stop sign taken out 3 times. But it is incredibly dangerous what's happened, that you actually narrowed the opening to the top of 10th Street. I was told by the engineers this was about trying to slow traffic. It hasn't slowed traffic. I think they've taken it as a dare of how close they can call it at the top of that street. So again, I appreciate that there's room to grow. I am actually in favor, knowing there will be a second hopeful mode of traffic to exit people out of Campanelli versus just using basically Turnpike, 10th Street, and portions of Park. But you have to consider the roads that have already been impacted by the sewerage project that really lacks forethought. And before we can start dealing with Campanelli and rerouting, you really need to take into account what the existing road conditions are now, what you've already created because of the sewer project.
Thank you, Julie.
Julie, this is Bill Roth. I did want to let you know that the town has initiated a design in conjunction with Mass DOT to totally look at the realignment of Turnpike with Park Street, having it come in more at a right angle and looking at signalizing that intersection. That is a project that has just now got initiated with the town and Mass DOT.
I appreciate that. They had come and talked to the 10th Street residents, telling us that several years ago. The engineers came actually to my driveway during COVID. We were also told that they were going to make 10th Street one way. That didn't happen. We surely, as residents, didn't sign off on cramping down the top of 10th Street. What we said was, and we supposedly had agreement with the police and fire, that we would make 10th Street a one-way opportunity, and that hasn't changed. So appreciate that we're going to, in time, potentially get a set of lights, but what are we doing right now? Because to the gentleman that's on South Street, I totally empathize, but what are we doing about things now? That's more why, you know, I hate to kind of beat a dead horse, but you have no idea how bad it is unless you live on that street. And for just a point of information, my husband was born in the house that we're in right now. His parents built that house in the 50s. It's the only home he knows. And to be quite frank with you, we're thinking about leaving because of what's happened. Never thought in my wildest dreams that his childhood home would become a history for us. But that's how bad it's gotten.
Well, please reach out to me. You have my email. I think it's on the thing. And I can put you in touch with and work with you and the city engineer, and we can kind of talk about some of these issues regarding 10th Street and what they're going to and what's involved with that. Gentleman right here, and then you.
Thank you very much. My name's Dave Nankin. I live at 115 Corbett Road and have been living there for 41 years. When I first moved into the house, I got to know some of the neighbors who've been there for a little while. We talked about a lot of things, but one of the things we talked about, why wasn't there a traffic light at the end of Turnpike Street and Route 27? They all told me the same thing. Originally, when the industrial park was built, the owner of the industrial park was going to take care of that. They were going to put a light in. There's no light there. I like to take walks with my dogs. Disney World charges money for experiences that are minor compared to the experience you have walking on Turnpike Street. There's no sidewalks on either side. And the police run radar there, but they can't be there 24/7. The industrial park could help by asking the tenants to ask the truck drivers to use the exit on Route 27 rather than Central Street. But they haven't in 50 years. This extension's literally in our backyards. These were once pristine woods. No longer, they're not going to exist any longer. The value of our houses are going to diminish. It's the asset we've saved our life for. The industrial park owner is going to profit from the increased rental value. The town's going to profit from the increased tax revenue. Corbett Road's going to bear the brunt of all of this profit. The traffic on Turnpike Street will negatively affect all the streets connected to Turnpike Street. The pristine woods, they're not coming back. They're going to be an industrial park. We've all heard the promises in the past. The solar farm was going to put up 20-foot arborvitaes so we wouldn't even know it was there. They put up a handful of arborvitaes. Believe me, they're not 20 feet. If I live long enough, I might see them at 20 feet. The traffic light never happened. These promises are worthless. Sidewalks on Turnpike Street are starting to be planned. I'd prefer to see the sidewalks before we even discuss more development in the area. And here's another thing. The city of Boston, as well as other cities, when these developers decide to put something in, there's something called linkage. In order to get their development in, they've got to do something for the neighborhoods. I haven't heard anything that they're going to do for us. When Brewster Road was put together for that over 55, the developer put the sewer line down Cornell for those people. I'm against the zoning change. This is a small town. It diminishes our home's value. It diminishes our quality of life. I'm not interested in the promise of traffic lights and sidewalks or 20-foot arborvitaes. History tells us these promises are absolutely worthless, so don't tell me about the promises again tonight. Keep going here. In closing, I point to all the negatives I've talked about. One of the town officials going to watch out for us and protect the residents rather than acting as servants to businesses and corporate profits. I'll leave you with one last question, okay? What's in it for us?
My name is Dick Fedorowicz. I was born and raised in this town. I've lived on South Street my entire life. And I'll tell you something. I'm going to ask for 3 minutes of this time to say my piece. And this is what I'm going to say. I had a neighbor next to my house, which I have, by the way, I live in a very historic octagonal house in town. There is 10 in the state left in Massachusetts. There is approximately 50 in the country, entire country. It's a very unique house. My neighbor, who used to be a dentist, owned a triangular piece of property that was a little over an acre size. When that property got sold, that particular lot got broken into 3 pieces, a third of an acre, a third of an acre, and a third of an acre, plus or minus a little bit. So for 8 months, we watched a 2-story office building get built next to our house. It was lowlands. They brought in over 10 feet of fill to build this 2-story office building on. And then they applied for an occupancy permit. And guess what? They never had a building permit. And guess what? They built it 7 feet too close to Park Street. So now the town is in trouble because now they don't have enough parking spaces. So the town allowed him to falsify documents stating he was the owner of my property to ask for a variance. And guess what got done? Nothing. They could have torn that building down. The building is twice the size it should be. That was 1/3 of an acre. The middle acre had a small business on it, which was fine, and then it got sold to a baking company. A baking company that was making Syrian bread. And guess what? They had a 3,600 RPM gas blower on top of that building, whining, screaming all night long, with trucks coming in and out. This is what it's like to live next to industrial land. The third property that got built, again, it was lowlands. They put 18 feet of fill onto that property to build a 2-story office building. And guess where the drainage goes? It comes to me. You build a piece of property 18 feet, and you have a drainage ditch coming either onto Park Street or onto my old driveway, which the town considers an old street, which is not. I have documentation stating it's my driveway. And I can challenge the town at any point in that. And Cynthia knows, we used to have, across the street from the old trailer park, we used to have a grand time at Cedar Lodge. So Cedar Lodge, to go into Cedar Lodge back in the 60s and 70s, you came off of Route 27, you drove into a muddy parking lot, and they made the best clams you could ever want. They had, dances there and all this other stuff. That got sold, and now they built a big restaurant there. The name got changed a couple times, and half of their parking lot, when they built it, because they have drainage issues, that parking lot pitches onto Route 27 into a culvert. Back in the 40s, my ancestries allowed the state of Massachusetts to put in a drainage ditch pipe, a 12-inch pipe, to connecting culverts to go through our property. I have the documentations. The documentation states they would put a 12-inch pipe throughout our property. So it never happened. What they did is they put a 12-inch pipe across my old driveway, put it down into a lowlands, and dug a trench. So now I'm sitting on 2 acres of wetlands because the state of Massachusetts did not come through and put a 12-inch drainage pipe off to my property line. So this is what it's like to be a neighbor close to industrial property. And I'm disgusted. So what happened was, somewhere in the mid-'80s, the wife and I got really frustrated with what happened to those 4 pieces of property. So we approached the town and rezoned 100 acres, which is now you're trying to rezone it, because we wanted to protect our neighborhood from having to deal with what we did. Because once you bring industrial property up against residential, their property value is going to decrease by 50%, if not more. And, the one biggest bill or commitment a homeowner makes is to buy a house. And that's supposed to be their nest egg. So you're taking away the nest egg if you come onto these particular people, 7, 8 houses. You're going to take away their nest egg and diminish their property value by approximately 50%. And if you think that's fair, I got something else coming. It's not right. It's okay for Stoughton to have some woods. And one
Hey,
other
I'm
quick,
like- is there a chance
one
that
other real
I
quick
can chime
point.
in here. I'm on the Google Meets, and I don't even know if anyone notices. It took me 5 minutes to get into this meeting to be accepted.
Go next.
One other quick point.
No. Can anyone even hear me?
Brian, we can hear you. You'll be next.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One other real quick point. I want to tell you who made up the town of Stoughton. My ancestors, when they were 12 and 13 years old, ran through swamps from the Ukraine to come to America. And they moved into Revere and Chelsea area. They saved enough money to buy the homestead that I'm currently at right now. And they worked hard their entire life. And they survived the Depression by doing what they did. You know, whether it was growing potatoes, making apple cider, having chickens or eggs, or did whatever they did. Those are the people that made Stoughton, Stoughton. And now it seems like it's all about industry and how much money the town can make and selling us out. And I'm tired of it.
Brian, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just wanted to chime in and say my piece as well. I live off of Corbett Road. I'm on the back end, so my property abuts the new solar array that was put in. Relatively new to the area. I've been here maybe 8 or 9 years now with my family. And just from what I'm hearing already from past residences and different things when the rezonings happened years ago, just sounds like there's a lot of unkept promises. And even with the solar array that just went in, you know, they said there you weren't even going to see it. They said it was going to be, 100 feet of green space behind your property before they would even build anything. They said they were going to put up plants that would cover it, and they put plants like 15 feet apart from each other. So, and they're all dying now. They didn't even finish back there yet. So we're talking about rezoning this area. We threw this solar panel thing in here, which was okay, I guess, but none of the promises were kept. And it's not even done yet. There's still fencing back there that was just thrown up for, construction purposes, never cleaned up. Right after the solar panels were put up, there was a big windstorm that knocked a bunch of trees down. They tore the trees down and just left them there in the back. So there's piles and piles of trees. And then the other complaint behind it is when they cut all these trees down, acres and acres of land, I've got nothing, I already had a little bit of a water issue in the basement from groundwater coming up. It wasn't coming off from runoff. It comes from the water table that rises when it rains. And ever since they did this, I've got, 2 to 3 times more water in my basement because the water has nowhere to go but just seep into the ground. And I'm sure that's nothing that anybody looked into. They know it's wetlands. Yeah, sure, it can, let's just make sure it doesn't, pollute the wetlands, which I'm sure all this construction had its fair share. Rezoning is going to have the same issue. And so now, I don't understand what the point of trying to rezone all this. There's already enough buildings back there. They just built another gigantic warehouse that we can all see. And now they want to do more? Why do we want to do more? What is the point of the town allowing to this, or even spending the money to even look into it? Nobody wants it. Our residents don't want it. It just seems like the people running the town want the money for it. So it doesn't make sense to me when all these unkept promises, they're never, whenever these promises are just left unkept, And you guys can tell us all you want about what you're going to do and what it's going to look like and how it goes, but 5 years from now, when everybody walks away from this and everybody's made their millions of dollars, we're left with this crappy little neighborhood because you put all this industry and, you know, nobody can build on the land. Everybody's septic has to be rebuilt because it has to be above the water table now, and it just keeps rising. So I don't understand the point of it, I guess, is it. Other than money, I don't see why we would even want to entertain this. Like, let's get some sidewalks, Turnpike Street, that's great. You sold all that land for the solar array, and now you want more? So that's where I stand. Obviously, I'm against it. You know, I appreciate all the sentiments from everybody else that has chimed in about this, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Brian. Go ahead, sir.
You know, at the end of the day, this is about, sorry to just interject, it's just hard when you're on the phone, but at the end of the day, this is about tax revenue for the town. And I appreciate it, I understand it, I understand that, you know, it's about development, but you have no idea how dangerous the roads are now on Turnpike, Park, 10th Street, some of these side roads. It is so egregious. I didn't think it could ever get any worse, and I am here to tell you it has. Appreciate that, you know, I can email people, I can talk to people. Gosh knows, I can only imagine the visceral reaction when my phone ID comes up at Town Hall that, you know, the crazy lady from 10th Street's calling again. But it's not because out of a lack of effort that we haven't tried to articulate, we have a problem. So I get why you're doing it. It's all about tax revenue. But you have forgotten about the people that are abutting it and are absolutely impacted by it daily. And I really think it's shameful. So appreciate that you have a whole presentation to tell us how great this is going to be for the industrial park, but maybe could we fast forward and tell us how you're going to help us from, you know, the abutters and the residential portion? I personally don't need to hear about how this is going to be great for Campanelli. I'd like to find out how it's going to be great for the residents. Do you have that to present to us?
Yeah. Some of the feedback we're getting, and we're going to take back and look, and mind you, some of the recommendations have come from the study that was done, you know, probably well over a year ago. I know that I, for one, am going to go back and look with the consultants and say, okay, that South Street residential area, it's a lot of wetlands and this and that. There's, you know, the conversation we're going to have is there really any gain in adding it into the industrial area or not? Yes or no? Those are the conversations that we're going to have. I know from hearing a lot of everyone here, and you had that section rezoned to the residential. I think one of the things that we're going to take back and say, look at what's the existing industrial zone over on the Corbett and the other side. It's some residential, and then there's the residential zone's about 100. It's about 100 feet. Some of my notes are, let's not mess with that. Leave that 100-foot residential zone as a buffer, and look at strictly the existing industrial zone, not expanding it. I have notes on that. There's two planning board members here also, and they're hearing the same thing. I would be remiss if I move forward without reviewing these and taking the public comment. You know, I think your comments are most likely, very likely, going to change whatever proposal. One of the things that's not really about rezoning, we're looking at taking the industrial area. Let's just say we leave the residential and we don't add to the park. And it's looking at changing some of those uses to allow for more wage earner jobs, not the storage buildings and the trucks. So that's one of the things. And yes, I inherited this project when I started 4 months ago. One of the reasons they looked at this study and they brought the sewer, and I hear the comments, they should bring the sewer to the residences, was to look at, creating, intensifying, and changing the types of potential uses that can go. Look at research and development and those sorts of things versus warehouses and those sorts of things. So that's some of the stuff. And I'm going to get to other people. I know everyone's thing, and as I said, nothing's written in stone. So I'm going to go. I'm going to ask for 30
And I
seconds.
think Peter is also.
After your 3 minutes. I'm going to let other people speak first.
Thank you. Amanda Culhane from South Street. Very small street. We got 5 houses on this street, and a lot of us are here. 8 houses. Thank you, Dick. I would first like to say thank you for the invitation to come here for this meeting, which I did not get. I got it, this lovely piece of paper, I got this from Dick. Dick shared it with Keith. Keith shared it with me. And what did I do? I did what the town should be doing. I made copies of this and was putting it in people's mailboxes around town. I went on Facebook. I posted this in the Stoughton News group. I posted it in the Stoughton Enthusiast. I posted it in the Everything Stoughton group, because who is telling people about this? I did that yesterday. I did it today. I didn't even know about this. And this is happening right across the street. I went on Corbett Street. I live on South Street. And I looked at this and I said, these people, I wonder if they know. Went over to this fine street, made some copies, and dropped it in some mailboxes. Why isn't the town doing that? Why is it my responsibility? You know why? Because I'm a resident and I care about this town. I grew up in this town. Do you live here in Stoughton? No, I know you don't. Do you live in Stoughton? No, you don't. Folks, I think we have a lot of information here by the 2 people whose names are on this, and they don't even live here. So why do they care about the people in our town? They don't. They don't. They're not for the people. They're for their pockets. And whether you can take that figuratively as your own pockets, the town's pockets, it's not benefiting us. So we didn't get information on this. Why? Because they don't want us to know. Because this is an informational session, and if they don't hear from the people who live there that this is happening in their backyard, then they're just going to go and do what they want to do. So, yeah, my front yard. So the wetlands, destroying wetlands, I saw a beautiful deer in my yard half hour before I came here. Where's he going to live? Where's he going to go with his family? The wildlife I see in my yard, I don't think Amazon or any other of these companies really care about any of the animals or the trees or our quality of air control by cutting down all of these trees and building these new buildings that are going to provide more air pollution. The more trucks that are going to come in to provide more air pollution. Your second street that you want to put in, because these office parks, they don't have just one way of entry. They need to have a more circular flow. Oh, put a street on South Street. Put a street on Corbett. Yeah, let all these trucks just run rampant through our neighborhoods. Not on Chapman Road, though, because they got 2 walls and signs, and they're somehow protected, and no trucks can go down their street. I want to know who lives there to get those walls and those trucks not going down their street. Why can't Turnpike Street be treated like that? and people and the trucks cannot turn off of Central Street and go down Turnpike Street. Why is that? When the trucks come out of Campanelli, there should be signs there telling them to take a left. Go on Park Street and get on the highway. Do not go down the residential neighborhood. Nope, not for Turnpike Street. Not even sidewalks for Turnpike Street. But Chapman Road gets walls and flowers and signs. Little South Street, who cares? There's only a few houses there. They won't miss their woods. Whatever, right? Well, we don't want it. We got enough trucks going down our street. If you lived, both of you, if you lived in this town and this was proposed, and you lived at one of these little squares on South Street, how would you feel? How would you feel if this was your house? I got my 5-year-old daughter back there. No way she can go anywhere in our front yard because of how fast these cars and trucks go down our street. And you want more? And you know what? I grew up in this town, and you better believe it's sad that I want to leave, because all this town does is sell out to companies, get these big companies coming in here. For what? Not for our benefit. Oh, goody, I can go shop at IKEA. You know how much traffic that brought to the area? They had to close down the exit in the highway when that opened up. Who cares, though? This town's making money, right? What about the people? What about the people? What about the residents? And you know what? When you expand in your Campanelli plan that you have, what happens when these companies leave? And what happens when they go out of business? I'll tell you one thing, those trees aren't growing back that you cut down. And then you're left what? With an empty building to fill. Just like, I would think, did we learn from what happened when Reebok left Stoughton? Over by BJ's, where Amazon is now, that used to be Reebok. And they left Stoughton. And that building sat empty for how long? And they went over to Canton. They built their own building that was in the shape of their logo, this big, extravagant building. And then what? They left Canton. They left that building empty. They went to the seaport. Canton finally filled that building. Stoughton got Amazon. You know what? There's plenty of other buildings over there. Why aren't these companies going over there? There's Bassett Furniture, gone. Another complex, gone. They're empty buildings. You want these companies to come in? Go fill the empty buildings we have. Go build something in the center of town. Don't cut down our trees. Don't kill our animals. If you haven't seen the movie The Lorax, you should, because that's what's happening here. And it's so obvious. You don't care about the people. You really don't. You should be for the people and not for your pockets.
The other thing she didn't mention is the reason some of these buildings, companies left, is because their tax break ran out. We have a company in the industrial park right now. They got a 5 and a 10-year tax break to build. So the town is losing money by enticing some of these companies to build in our town for 5 and 10 years. That's not what I initially wanted to mention, but because of her comments, I needed to make that public, because a lot of people don't realize what happens. What I do want to make public is a lot of people do not realize what took place on Page Street last month. They are putting in 2 600,000 square foot warehouses. 3. with 190 loading docks and 400 to 500 trucks a day coming into our town with an operation running 24/7. Now, that isn't an industrial area. It's behind Simeon's. It's up by Maple and...
The quarry.
It's not a quarry, it's Simeon's gravel pit. I was born in town. I know my area in town. I know every knoll behind Keith's house and behind my house. But a lot of people do not realize how all these trucks, there is proposal that all the trucks are supposed to come off of Route 24 onto 139 and drive onto Page Street. But guess what? That doesn't work. Truckers are going to go anywhere they can to get to Page Street. And some of it's going to be right through town. They're going to come off of 95 through Sharon, through Stoughton Square, and work their way through over to Page Street. And they're talking a truck every 8 minutes. That's what was estimated. And they said, oh, it's only a 60-foot truck. It's like, no, it's not a 60-foot truck. It's a 56-foot box. And if there's something has to pull that truck, and, you know, so it's going to be 80 feet or 85 feet long, coming through our town, ripping up our roads. And this is something that's already been, I think it's been fully passed. So, in addition to that, now they want to do Campanelli on top of that. I didn't hear what kind of tax break they're going to get. No, none. Because we don't know who the company's going to fill that. So, you know, 90% of our population does not know what is going on in town. We lost the Stoughton Journal, where we used to get information from. So now the information is publicized in the Patriot Ledger. And how many people subscribe to the Patriot Ledger to get Stoughton news? We have a crappy website that's supposed to be fixed. You know, it's like, why can't we control our spending in town? Our population, since I graduated from high school, back in the late 60s, early 70s, the population has increased by 1%. And I sit here and look at some of the directors, and guess what? They say we have to build elderly housing in town to force our elderly people out of their houses so they have younger people coming in raising families. And I'm totally absurd with statements like that. I'm an elderly person. Do I want to leave my house to let a young family come in? No. I've been in my house since my house was built back in the early 1800s. I don't want to leave my house. If I do, it will probably be in a grave. But enough is enough. We have to curb our spending. Thank you.
Thank you. I live on South Street. You just heard from my lovely wife, Amanda, right over there, who had a lot of valid points. And I'm going to make this fast, brief, because I got to get my 5-year-old to bed. We bought the house in 2010 when the previous guy was giving houses away. And so when we bought the house, we were doing projects and projects and projects, remodeling the whole inside of the house. And now that our family has been growing and her brother's now having kids and the in-laws and whatnot, we host every holiday, I wanted to add a 10 by 12 foot structure off the back of my house so I could make more room for my family as I cook and we host, pardon me. And I was shut down by the town numerous times because I was going too close to the wetlands, even though the wetlands are a good 35, 40 yards away from my house. But it was going too close to the wetlands, even though I just wanted 10 by 12 foot living space so I could have a little fireplace, another big couch, so we could play and watch her and what have you. But yet, you guys can come in, tear down 24. How many acres are you tearing down back there?
We're not tearing it down.
But you're paving over wetlands, correct?
No, we're not.
No, you're not. So what are you doing over the wetlands?
We're preserving the wetlands.
Oh, you're preserving the wetlands. Oh, there's spot zone. Can you spot zone my backyard so I can have a little bit more room so I don't need to go move to Douglas or Uxbridge and buy a brand new house for what my house is worth? I love my sub pump.
You can't be heard. Let it go. He's got the mic.
I live on the other side of town, but I've lived here all my life. And I graduated before you did, class of 62 over here. So I understand what these folks are saying. And there's a wide variety of people here, not just us old timers, but young couples. So it affects everybody. But you know what I want to know? I served on the Stoughton Planning Board. Don't want to admit how long ago it was. How do you folks at the MAPC, I've never seen this before anywhere, that you come to the town of Stoughton and you start touting this project. How do you come to our town when you're supposed to be an agency that helps all the towns in the area to help them through technical issues? And you're here, and I don't know why you're here as that committee, because you're not, I never heard of this. It never happened when I was on the board, and I pay attention to politics, been around a long time. I've never seen your group do this. Normally, we would be listening to a developer proposing a project, probably at the planning board, which is a lot different from when I was here. They do a lot more work than we had to do. The point is, I want to know, why are you here? Why are you here?
The town of Stoughton worked with the Regional Planning Agency and the Development Services Division to come up with a scope of services to look at the zoning at Campanelli because sewer was coming in. I'm just letting you know, this is because sewer was coming in, to look at the zoning and what could be higher and better uses at the zoning. Some of the stuff looked at was to expand and not expand. Well, I think that, you know, nothing's written in stone, and, you know, we hear all the feedback regarding that. This project's not about a developer coming in. It's looking at changing the uses that are allowed, getting rid of certain uses and looking at adding certain uses to create a separate zoning district or an overlay per se. That's what we're looking at doing. MAPC was hired by the Town and Development Services Division. The scope of services was developed with the town and them. They didn't come in. We sought them out as a consultant to help us, to look at, and that's the purpose of it. And I know that most of you disagree with that, and that's fine. And I respect all of that.
You should go to the people that live in the town and ask them first.
That's what we're doing right now. And a lot of the feedback.
I hope you listen to
And a lot of the feedback, yes, we're
Yes.
taking a lot of the feedback in, and I'm fairly confident, as the town planner, I'm going to look at, seriously look, we're taking all of this in. Everything is very passionate about this, and we're going to take a relook at this.
Yeah.
Okay? Huh?
Well, you know what, the way it looks to me is that your agency is running interference for the Board of Selectmen of the town of Stoughton. I don't see one member of those guys here that I can see. So, why, like some of these people are saying, why isn't the Board of Selectmen here saying that these folks, you and your young lady there, they're going to do this job for us? Now, I become very curious talking about this Park Street sewer. There was a lot of talk about it. It went on for some time. And initially, as I remember, the Park Street sewer was going to go by 10th Street down to help people like the, I call it a rest home. I guess it's not a rest home, and Sarah's Restaurant. And they have a particular problem. I've done some work down there for those folks, and I think at one time they were having pumping done twice a week. The Chateau, now the Chateau. But suddenly the project changed. So when the project changed, suddenly it goes down 10th Street. And my curiosity is aroused saying, well, was that the reason that it went down Park? Because you people are already probably talking about this in a back room somewhere. Maybe not. I do want to mention my friends Julie and Jim on 10th Street. Julie spoke earlier. And having done work up there, she's not kidding about that raceway. And we did stuff there, as Julie would say, some years ago. And I can imagine what it must be like now. So there's no question about that. The other gentleman mentioned a project going on, which is up on Page Street, which I guess the planning board members, I guess there are a couple here, but everybody's trying to be quiet about what's going in there. But we all know what's going in there. It's Amazon. And what was mentioned, one building is going to have, as I understand, 100 docks in one of their warehouses. And they've gone in a little bit further and bought the property from the tree company, getting old here, Malpe's Tree Company. And they've added that onto this project. So you've got a massive project coming into North Stoughton, Page Street, and these guys have to go in and out of the highway to get to their destinations. And as this other man mentioned, and they go 24/7 with trucks and vans and so forth. So, that's a problem. And these folks on South Street, I shouldn't admit this, but that's a hell of a shortcut to get to Westgate, Walmart, the hospital. Yeah, I've done that a lot and continue to do it a lot. So, but I don't drive my trucks anymore. So it's just my little car now. So all these things that the folks are telling you, these are, these aren't just whims. These are the problems that we, and I get a strange feeling that this whole project, you're trying to create, I think, a placeholder for another large company. I could be wrong, but this is what they did here to us up at Page Street. The whole thing was hush-hush. This big project's coming in, stretching from Simeon's all the way up to Malpe's and so forth and so on. And we all know that it's Amazon. And there's people still in this building who will probably say, well, we can't confirm that. And if you're going to add another large project, probably maybe even more than what's going on up there, the town, I don't think the town can take it. We don't have the infrastructure for it. So I hope you folks feel better than what I'm thinking.
Hi, I'm Paul Fedorowicz, and I live on South Street in the Octagon House. And years ago, they had the master plan, and some of the guys on the board then, the planning board then, are still on the planning board now. And we had, they had our house as an industrial zone. The whole South Street was industrial zone. And we were trying to preserve our neighborhood, and we went before town meeting. We called, I got a list of all the town meeting representatives and their phone numbers, and I called every one of them. And we had that zoned residential. So it's been like 30 years. It's been 30 years that it's been residential. We're trying to preserve the Octagon House and the neighborhood. And we have a nice area on Central Street in Avon, nice residential area. It's not run down. The houses are kept up, except, of course, the next door neighbor to me is not, which he's a little different. And anyway, the neighborhood's kept up, and it's a very small street. It is a cut through. We do get some traffic there. We could use some sidewalks, wouldn't hurt. Fields Park's right there. It's a beautiful little corner of town. One thing, so we had 78% of the town meeting reps at the time voted to keep it residential. So they overruled the master plan, which people keep touting at this time. Now, as far as the project up on Turnpike, between Turnpike and Page Street, that's 190 loading docks, approximately between 400 or 500 truck trips a day, 570 parking spots for employees. So all that traffic is going to empty out onto either 139, onto the 24, or it's going to go down Turnpike Street, down to 24 on Central Street, or it'll go over to 138 and 95. So anyway, the entrance, the exit that we use on 20 to get to 24, we either use 27 or we use Central Street. So you're going to have people, this industrial park, with up to 5-story buildings, 4 stories, 5 stories by special permit, emptying onto Turnpike Street, going onto Central Street, and going onto the highway, or going onto 27 and going onto the highway. Or, according to the head of the planning board, Mr. Kelly, he thought it was a good idea to have an exit from the industrial park onto South Street. So that was another option that they considered. Another thing, if you look at the town's website, under .gov, or it has Campanelli improvements, it shows that one of the things that they want to do is have research labs there. So do you want to bring research labs, medical research labs with viruses and things into town? You know, you're going to go shopping there. People are going to go work there, and they're going to go eat at the restaurants around and, you know, mingle with the community. Do you want to have them bringing that into town? That's one of the changes in use. Another thing they're planning on doing is they're planning on changing the setback requirements. So you have less room between you and the business that they built. Another thing is, it is wetland, so what are they going to do with the water? Are they going to dig up a retaining pond and relocate the wetlands? What's going to happen? So those are my observations. But I just wanted to let everybody know that this change has to go before town meeting. And the town meeting representatives have to vote on it. Even though they want to change the form of government here so people can't do that and contact their town meeting reps and have them vote against it, it's still an option. You can get a list of the town meeting reps from the town hall with their phone numbers, and you can call them. And before town meeting, they can vote. You can plead your case and have them vote to go against this zoning change. Okay, thank you. That's all I have to say.
There's been people waiting patiently, okay? Cynthia, there's one person, he's been waiting, and then I'll get to you. Very quickly.
Quick?
Yeah.
Come on, you know me.
Yeah.
My name is Peter Murphy. I live at 60 Peters Drive, and I am a town meeting rep for Precinct 2. I am also just newly appointed to the planning board. I saw what was going on, and that's the reason why I applied for the planning board. Now, one of the things that I did last December was I walked down Turnpike Street and some of the side streets, and I got a petition going to have sidewalks on Turnpike Street. I got the signatures, and I apologize on my part. I missed the December 31st deadline. I brought it before your select board to see if they could insert it. I was scolded because I missed the deadline. That petition is sitting down at the clerk's office right now. I don't know what's going to happen with it. All right, so I'm willing to go around with another petition and get it back in for the spring town meeting. I also contacted Walter Timilty, and I asked him, I said it's 1.2 miles from Central Street all the way down to down to Park Street for a sidewalk. One of the things that I was also told by the select board that they would look into this. I don't know what has happened since. Actually, I do know what has happened since. I've been told nothing. The reason I was told nothing, because it's too expensive. They have to look at drainage for Turnpike Street. Now, I've counted 12 storm drains on the upper part of Turnpike Street from Central all the way down to, I'm going to say, maybe 4th or 5th Street. So there is drainage there to get sidewalks at least down that part. The other option would be down on the lower part of it, not a sidewalk, but a walkway, putting down gravel or something like that to get the people off the streets. You have the trucks that are coming down, the cars that are coming down. And again, it's the safety of the people. You have young children, granted you're on South Street, but where do you go? There's people on, when my daughter was young, I would walk all the way over to Green Street with her. And what happens is it was a challenge to get across Turnpike Street back then. She's 34 years old. So since then, you've seen the industry that has come into the area. And one of the things was IKEA. They were supposed to continue the sidewalks down Turnpike Street from Central down to the residential housing. If you look, it starts at Central and gets partway down before it gets to IKEA Way. Down by Metropolitan Truck, there's a house beside there. That's residential. That's a residential house. IKEA did not keep to their part of the bargain. As far as the project that's going in between Turnpike Street and Page Street, I came before the select board last year telling about Maple Street and how dangerous it is. And I was told by a select board member, oh, don't worry, that problem is going to go away. All right? If nothing else, that problem is going to be worse on Maple Street. I was also at several of the meetings, and I'm glad to see the response tonight. Thank you for getting the word out, because for that project to come in, I was to several of the meetings. And again, there was not a lot of people there opposing it because word did not get out. So shame on us, shame on the town for not letting the people know. So what I'm going to ask of you people, again, contact your select board to tell them that you want sidewalks before anything else goes on down that area. And I'm going to get scolded, I'm sure, by the select board for speaking out. Last night, actually, at one of those meetings, I saw their lawyer, after he said his, whatever he was talking about to the planning board, walk away from the table, and he patted one of your select board members on the shoulder and smiled at him, all right? Last night, if you watch your select board's meeting, go to 1 hour and 45 minutes into that meeting. Look at that, because that's on Smack. You're going to see a select board member praising their lawyer for coming into our town. Take it for what it's worth. I was born at daytime, at nighttime, but not last night. Thank you.
Please excuse me for not standing. I have congestive heart failure, and it limits my mobility. My name is Cynthia Walsh. I live at the farm at 1096 Park Street, which probably abuts, I mean, it really abuts the industrial park. I know it's easy to come to these meetings and harken back to the old days. I can go back to 1948 and how much things have changed. But we need to keep realizing that the people in this room are the government. I'm a town meeting representative. Peter said he is one, and I know he's been one for many years. Any zoning change must go through town meeting. It must receive a majority. Is it a majority or 2/3? It has to receive a 2/3 vote. There's 168 town meeting representatives. I'm from 3, Peter's from 2. If you are a registered voter, you need to know what precinct you live in. Starting in September or October, you can go to the town clerk's office, which is on the first floor. The present town clerk will not give you our phone numbers. She will give you our names and addresses, but not our phone numbers. So that means if you have anything you want to say, you're going to have to write it out and mail it out at 67 cents a letter. But the cheapest thing you can do is get nomination papers for town meeting rep. You only need 15 signatures of registered voters in your precinct. Most of you could do that on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon, especially if there's a football game, because then you get the crowd in one house and you get more signatures. But it's not hard to be a town meeting rep. Now, you probably heard the meetings are boring, blah, blah, blah. But it's not boring when it's your neighborhood on the block. And you don't have to run for re-election if you don't want to. But you, if you're a town meeting rep, get to vote on any proposed zoning changes. Now, if for some reason you don't want to do that or you're not a registered voter, you still need to keep track of when this will be on before town meeting. And you can sit in the back of the hall and you are entitled to speak. It doesn't matter if you're a citizen, you don't even have to live in Stoughton, you don't have to be a registered voter. It's the First Amendment. You go up to the mic and you make your case. And as a previous speaker mentioned, those of us in town meeting have all made the same investment you've made. And we're there partly to protect our investment. So when you tell your story, we listen, because we're not professional politicians. We don't put up signs, we don't take out ads. We're ordinary residents of Stoughton. So when you feel passionately about something and you have the right to make the change, coming to these meetings and yelling and screaming is not that effective. When you have a vote, then you can make a change.
Well, I don't think we'll conclude with our presentation. It's already almost 7:30. We've heard you loud and clear.
Yes.
We're going to go back and reevaluate these things, and and then we'll talk with the planning board, and I'll talk with the consultant and development services, and then we will then probably we'll take everything in and look at reevaluating it.
Can you ask them why they want to expand?
I've told you that. My understanding is, and the reason for looking at doing this is to look at increasing the, as we said, increasing the tax base and looking at increasing the use of Campanelli now that it has sewer. The sewer project, when it was put forth, Mark Tisdale, and my boss, was like, that was one of the things. I mean, and when I got and when I got hired, I was like taking over this project and looking at, there's no specific project that I know of. It's looking at higher and better uses that we can't do without the sewer. Like there's a business that just expanded that does submarine parts for the Department of Defense, for the Navy. They would not have expanded and moved if not for the sewer. When the sewer project was contemplated, they decided to stay. And it's looking at taking the existing buildings, the existing lots, and looking at uses that, are higher in intensity, predominantly looking at providing wage earning jobs and those sorts of things. That's what we're looking at doing.
They get a 5 and 10 year tax break on their building.
I do not know if the submarine place. Okay, I don't know of any. A TIF requires town meeting approval too. So you can go back to Cynthia and you can talk about votes.
TIFs on 5 or 10 years are 20.
They're up to 20. So, okay, I was going to close it. I'm going to let our other planning board members speak, and then we will close out the meeting. Okay.
Hi, I'm Paul Bellevaux, 33 Cornell Drive, Stoughton, Mass. I am a town meeting rep, and I'm on the planning board. What I'd like you all to look at is on page 9 and page 8, where they discuss what the recommendations are of changing it from an I to an I2. These are important things for everybody to look at, because this is what we have to say, like, okay, so you're going to we have an industrial park there, so what kind of buildings do we want there? Do we want them to be allow 4-story buildings? Maybe we don't. Do we want them to be massive buildings? We don't. The I zoning also reduces the parcel of land, correct? Am I correct on that? So that would mean smaller buildings of certain types. So these are the things that you have to look at, and because it's going to happen. I mean, the industrial park's there, so they're putting sewage in there. What we want to have there is, if we're going to have an industrial park there, we want a nice industrial park. We don't want machinery and things that you'll hear running overnight. When they had the flooring company in there for a while, it was those things were running 24 hours a day. The other thing, and we did talk about this in the previous meeting, is requiring that larger buffer zone where the abutters are, you know, Corbett and Cornell Drive. You know, they can basically do with their zoning, they can say, you know, 200 feet, you can't build anything on the building has to, the setback can't be further than that. Also, I did ask, and I think they're going to come up with a better graphic of how exactly the park looks. I mean, I'd like to see where the transmission lines go through, you know, more detail about the peripheral areas where they can't build it all, et cetera. And I know they're going to do this, so, you know, stay tuned. We all have a great part in this, and we can help them out.
And on the planning board's website, there's a thing that says Campanelli rezone study. The presentation material will be uploaded next week. But one of the documents that Paul mentioned is it's a draft of what a zoning bylaw would look, and you can I think it's the first one on there. It's the draft bylaw and text amendment. That's really the meat of what they're looking at, what is looking at proposing. What uses would be changed, gotten rid of, what new uses, are some things permitted, are some things special permits. We can revisit height, setbacks, and we're definitely going to revisit if we even expand the industrial district. After this meeting, we're definitely, I pledge to you that we are going to go take a very, very hard look at that, okay? And
Me too.
none of our study talks about a street.
Yeah.
I heard that.
There's no proposed added street
There's no
at all.
proposed added street. One
The
of the
site
things she
plan review, which is part of the process, which zoning can sort of control, that site plan review will look at the circulation, but there is no addition of any street. We can't propose construction of any street through this.
So
That changes like that.
yeah. So
You can't make promises you can't keep.
yeah, well, zoning doesn't do streets. That's that's a totally separate thing.
Promises you cannot keep.
Yeah, the zoning change doesn't add or build a street, is what I'm letting you. So I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Okay.
One quick point. What I'd like to see added to this is a risk assessment. I'd like to see a risk assessment for environmental, a risk assessment for
Okay.
residential.
There's the zoning change. There's no need for risk assessment, sir, because the zoning doesn't. It doesn't.
If you're going to do any work there or anywhere else in town, I would suggest you do a risk
Yeah. Okay. We will look into that. We will look into that. Okay. So, thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Please stay tuned.